start down that roadbed, and we get about, I don't know, maybe 30 yards past the actual drop off, and Tommy hit a fish. And boy, that rod doubled up. I said, man, that's a big fish. And all of a sudden, that fish came straight up, carried this lure right out of the water with him and jumped. It is a muskie. Now, just so you understand, he had never caught a muskie. I had never caught a muskie. We live in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of muskie in Pennsylvania, but we had never caught one. So we knew as soon as we saw it jump, it was a muskie. We were excited. It looked to be about 12 pounds. It looked to be, an adult fish. Wasn't huge, but it is a big old fish. We've been catching these bass, And all of a sudden I started thinking, that's probably why there's no bass on this thing. There's muskie on it. Well, Buck had made a statement to me that all fish school, not just bass, but walleye, panfish, white bass, northern pike, and muskie. They all school, and they school according to size. So when we caught that muskie, I got to telling Tommy about Buck telling me about how these fish school. He said even muskies. Most people don't believe that. He said, but it's true. But let's get back and see if there's any more in there. Long story short, on the next pass, we hit two fish at the same spot, two muskies at the same spot on the same trolling pass, same spot where he caught the first one. We landed those fish. They were all about the same size, between 10 and 12 pounds. Nice fish, not giant fish, but nice adult fish. And we didn't know what else to do, so we kept on trolling. We didn't have a casting position. We couldn't anchor shallow enough. And the speed of the lure was pretty fast. We were walking that lure pretty fast down that roadbed. And we wanted to not change anything. It's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of idea. We didn't want to change anything. We wanted to do what we just did. And after we hit that double and all of the commotion, he and I were yelling, but normally there's nobody on the lake. We looked up over to the left. I still can see that guy sitting there. There's a guy sitting in what looked like a little aluminum boat, maybe a 12, 14-foot boat, small engine. But he wasn't fishing. And he was probably 150 yards from us, a long ways off, but he was just sitting there. And it looked like he was pointing just towards us. And with those muskie jumping, he probably saw that we were catching fish. Maybe he was only 100 yards away, something like that. At any rate, we went back and we made another pass, hit another fish, and I started, Tommy hit that fish. When he landed that fish, I said, I don't know a whole lot about the Pennsylvania regulations on muskie because I never caught one. Never thought about it. I said, but I think it's either one or two. And I said, you see that boat over there? That could be a game warden, so we better make sure. I don't know that it's two. Do you know? And he said he didn't know. I said, well, let's just go along with it. It's only one. So let's toss these fish back. So we each kept a fish. So we have two muskies. We're legal. We know for sure we're legal. But we're having so much fun. We go back, we make another pass. I'm going to wrap it up for you. It's the most muskie I ever caught and Tommy ever caught on one movement of fish on one structure at the same time. And we weren't even casting. They stayed there for an hour. We trolled every fish up. We caught 11 fish, 11 muskies on one migration of fish on an underwater railroad grade. So here we are. We're about as shook up as I was down in Florida with the 55 big bass. 11 muskie? I never caught one in my life. Now I caught 11 in the last 45 minutes. I mean, between Tommy and I, we were like little kids. We were just ridiculously stupid and laughing and carrying on and yelling and screaming. And all of a sudden, that guy that had been sitting off there about 100 yards, all of a sudden cranked up his engine and started coming towards us. And I said, I bet you that's a game warden, guaranteed. And I'm glad we only kept two. But he was sitting there watching this whole affair going on. And of course, every muskie, they're jumping out of the water, carousing, you know, and one of the fish was about 15 pounds. One of them was a really good fish. And this guy comes over. So we just took a break. We knew he was coming towards us for some reason. So we just reeled up and sat there for a second, and he came over. And of course, we had made 2 or 3 passes and hadn't caught any more fish. The activity was over. It was done. So this guy come zipping on over to us, and he said, man, he said, I just had to be sitting there, just happened to be sitting there and saw you guys catch all those northern pike. He said, I've never seen anything quite like that around here, catching all those pike. I said, mister, they weren't pike. They were muskies. He said, you serious? He said, I don't think there's any muskie in here. They're northern pike. I said, no, they weren't. I know what a northern pike looks like, and they don't jump. Those are all muskie. I said, we kept 2. Would you like to see them? He said, yeah. And of course, when he sort of showed his shoulder, we saw he had a patch on. Now, he wasn't a game warden, but he was a conservation officer. He was there for some other purpose. I don't know what they were doing, but he was with the conservation department. He said, man, we didn't know there were muskie in here. And I said, I didn't either. But there definitely is. We proved that. He said, man, I saw you guys catch every one of those fish. He said, that was crazy. So, when that day ended, I was convinced. I had to learn. Now I was really convinced. I want to learn everything that Buck has. Everything that he has, I want to know. And after we sent the pictures of the muskie, I called Buck and told him that muskie story. I said, we didn't just catch 2. It was just, that's the limit, 1 fish each. I said, we caught 11. He said, you caught 11 muskie trolling that underwater rope bed or railroad grate. I said, yeah. And all within an hour's time. And I said, we couldn't cast because it was too deep to cast. We just kept trolling. He kind of laughed. He said, man, that is really something. So he congratulated us and keep it up and all of that, and we hung up. About 5 days later, I got a phone call, and this is where my life changed. Buck Perry. He said, I'm going on a fishing trip with a couple of writers from Fishing Facts magazine. Going to go fish some smallmouth bass down in Tennessee. He said, I'd like you to go along with me on that trip if you could. Oh, man. Didn't take me about 2 seconds to say, count me in. I'd love to. And that's really when it all started. And when I found out when I got to Tennessee, he was going to be bragging me up and talking me up to all these writers about how quickly I learned all this stuff. And then he found out I didn't know nothing. And I could still see the look on his face. He asked me a few questions, and I was searching around to try to find an answer. I didn't have it. I said, Buck, all I know is I just been bouncing this lure right here off of a bar and this one right here off of a road bed. That's all I know. I know nothing else. And he just kind of shook his head and laughed. And he said, well, for not knowing nothing, you sure are catching an awful lot of fish. And that trip in Tennessee, he was out in the middle of Watts Bar, out in the middle of that big old reservoir, drilling his finger in the water and saying, there's a fish around here, you got to be right here. We backed up, dropped a marker, backed up, anchored down, threw a cast, boom, first cast. We're catching a limit of smallmouth on Watts Bar. And I said, that's it. Buck, you got to teach me this stuff. You got to teach me everything you know. He said, if you really want to know, I'll tell you. I said, I really want to know. That's how it all started. All started at Shenango Reservoir by me being lucky, trolling a spoon plug. I didn't even know about casting positions. I didn't know anything about it. Had to learn all that as I went along. So when I got back from Tennessee, I really started studying hard. I studied hard just like I was back in college or something. And I studied in the Green Book. And I would call Buck and ask questions. Pretty soon he had another trip scheduled, took off somewhere else. And then when he got home from that, every place we went, didn't matter. Stripers, smallmouth, walleye, largemouth. Everywhere we went, we're catching fish instantly, first day. It doesn't take them very long, and it didn't matter the lake type. So I kept learning on these little trips and getting a little bit better at my own fishing. And that's how the career started, going fishing with Buck. And then when I started working for him, I got to fish with him all over the country. Now, with all that being said, our whole idea of this discussion up to this point, this is the 14th part, is to identify the spots. Not so much what we're going to do, how we're going to catch them and all that. We're going to talk about it. But there's been so many questions, as I said before. I'm going to finish with this. Those fish we caught at Lake Arlington from the casting position, this was the lure. They're made out of brass. You throw them out, you sink it down to the channel. And since we had an anchoring position, a proper anchoring position, it stayed on the bottom all the way back to the boat. And as fast as I could crank it, that's how fast those fish were hitting that lure. And we kept those fish in a frenzy for 45 minutes and landed 38 bass, all on the same lure. Now, I don't know of any other lure that I can throw into 45 feet, keep it on the bottom all the way back to the boat where I'm sitting in 7 feet, as fast as I can reel the lure, and have it staying on the bottom like that. There is no such thing. There's not another lure that will do it. People say, how come you're always using those lures? Because there's 7 different sizes that I can reach any depth that my structure dictates, and I can work that lure at a steady speed, a slower speed, or as fast as I can crank it, and it stays on the bottom. Buck used to say, there is no such thing as a magic lure. You can't buy success in a fancy wrap package. You said it all the time. But if there was anything ever close to a magic lure, the series spoon plugs is it. And the reason is I can control all my depths and all my speeds for the bulk of the season from 0 to 60 feet. What other lure could I do that? If I saw this roadbed where we caught all those muskies, the railroad grade, it's 20 feet. What lure would you use if you had to troll 20 feet at a fast speed and keep the lure at 20 feet? You probably can't think of one, but I got one. Spoon plug. I just pick out the right size, let out the right amount of line, and I'm at exact depths, whichever depth is called for. So I'm going to be talking more and more about it in our series on presentation, talking about all the different lure types, including the spoon plugs. When you ask me what do I troll with, 95% of the time it's a spoon plug. And there's 7 different sizes. So if you want to get fast start on your fishing season, be sure to give Scott Jenkins a call at Buck's Baits. He owns the place. Tell him Don Dickson sent you. He'll give you the best price. He'll give you a cheaper price than he gives the rest of the world. Not only on the material, but also on the lures and all of the equipment that he has. Or you can just go to my website, dondixonfishing.com, and there's a link right there, a link right to him. And he'll take care of you. And I want to finish by saying, I'm not a lure salesman. Whether you ever buy spoon plugs or equip yourself like I'm suggesting, that's up to you. But I can tell you, I went from not catching fish to catching fish all over the country, all species and all kinds of weather and all different lake types. Did it for a living and ended up teaching over 500,000 people all about it. And it'll change your fishing life. But when you identify that spot, and that's what this whole structured talk is about, identifying the spot. Once you identify it, you have to have a lure that you can put on there. And you have to bring it by the fish at the right speed. Obviously, you could take a jig and throw it to any depth, but that's a slow working bait. If you try to work it fast, it leaves the bottom. You've lost your number 1 control in fishing, which is depth. So there's only one bait that I know that I can trust to fish all of the depths, and that's the spoon plugs. All 7 sizes. I wouldn't go fishing without them, period. So when I end up telling you the whole story about behind what lures and so on and so forth, and in our series that's coming up, you can wait till then, or if you're going fishing soon, you better call Scott Jenkins and get yourself some spoon plugs. You won't be sorry, I promise. Now, with all that being said, that was pretty long-winded today. But I wanted to tell you about my beginning My beginnings in the business at Shenango Reservoir in Pennsylvania, and the importance of road beds, railroad grades, terrific, terrific structures, and they're relatively easy to fish. So until the next time, like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I appreciate you. See you the next time.